Kayla, my girl. And then we might have some other people coming in. I'm not sure yet. But yeah, so this is my senior mastery. So a little bit about me. Of course, I go to AST. We're all seniors. I've been dancing since I was 3, so that's a dance picture from a long time ago when I used to tap. I've been doing sports since forever. Since I got into high school, I've done volleyball. And then here's a picture of me and a few people on my team, my track team. And of course, I'm in the pre-medicine major. I'm really involved in church. We do a lot of things with church organizations and just things after school for church, or like singing on the choir, ushering, like things like that. And then I'm Miss AKA Debutante. So a lot of people in this class are like, you did cotillion? I'm like, yeah, it was a lot more work than it looks, but I did. So I've been here all 4 years. So I started my medical classes as a sophomore. So I take an EMS with Ms. McCallum. And then as a junior, I took med terms, health science 1, and then as a senior, I took health science 2, health science 3 clinical studies, anatomy and physiology, which is where this picture is from. I'm currently taking that class, and we just dissected a sheep part. And then I also added AP biology in because I've had the pleasure this semester of having all medical or biology-based classes. So I really, really like that because it's kind of giving me a taste of what I'm going to have in college. So everything kind of goes together. So if we're learning about pathology in health science 3 or health science 2 of a body system, then we learn about it on the cellular level in AP Bio. So last semester, everyone had a PICO question, and I love mental health. So I, of course, chose a mental health disorder, and so mine was schizophrenia because there's a lot of research around it, but not really a lot of ends found, kind of. So like there's not a lot of answers, but there's a lot of research. So my question was, is electroconvulsive therapy a safe and viable option for people suffering from schizophrenia? So electroconvulsive therapy is essentially shock therapy, and I just went through I think 3 studies, and basically schizophrenia affects everyone differently. So you can't really say it's good or it's bad, but in the studies that I looked at, it's overall a good choice to at least try out if cognitive behavioral therapy or other types of therapy don't work out. So my projects. So I've had a lot of projects, but I don't really take pictures of them. So these are just a few projects that I've done. So the other day we dissected squid, and I was in a group with 2 guys, and I did all the dissecting myself because they were like, Amaya, do you want to dissect? So I was like, sure. And then they were looking for me the next day to help them dissect the next thing we did. But I actually did pretty good with my incisions and everything, like certified squid surgeon or whatever you want to call it. But so this my mom helped me with because that's why it's so glittery, because anything my mom helps me with has glitter. So this was Ebola. So we had to pick a virus in class, and we had to make it our own basically. And if you guys, well, I picked Ebola because, you know, everyone picks Ebola whenever they can pick it because it's like, oh my gosh, Ebola. Like, you guys know what I mean. So when I actually looked up a picture of it and I was like, yo, I have to build this. Like, I really regretted it, but my mom worked it out. This is actually a piece of a blow dryer hose that we cut up and then wrapped it in like Christmas ribbon that you make gifts with at Christmas time. So it was really intricate, but it worked out, and I got 100. So this is our burns and wounds lab. So we use makeup, cotton balls, food coloring, and this is my arm. And Caitlin, I helped Caitlin make the wound. I forgot. I think it was supposedly a glass cut me or something like that. I also did a cell signaling project, which I chose bipolar disorder because again, it's a mental disorder. And so basically we had to talk about what goes wrong in the brain in bipolar disorder. So like what misfires, things like that. So it's been very tough to get into so much detail on the cellular level in AP biology, but it's been like an eye-opener because it's so cool, even though it's hard to do. So community service. So I've done teddy bear clinic for 3 years with Miss McCallum. So this is my 3rd year. This is my 1st year. So first year we did bike safety. So we basically made up a song, and it was like head, elbows, knees, and toes. So head, make sure you wear a helmet when you ride your bike. Elbows, make sure you have your elbow pads on. Make sure you have your knee pads on, and make sure you have closed-toed shoes. So basically simple things like that to help the kids remember to always be safe when riding their bike. So I did polar plunge. This year also I did a few beach sweeps, open houses for the major, and then I've coached a few kids for like track and long and triple jump, which are my events in track. And then for Christmas, I helped some kids make jewelry for their parents as gifts, and yeah. So longer term community involvement. So fun fact, my grandmother was one of the people who basically I can't think of the word. I'm drawing a complete blank. She got arrested a couple times because she was basically fighting for our rights as African Americans, and so she marched, she sat at counters, she did all of that. So with her, we were able to march against gun violence. So we took a whole huge trip and we went to Washington and we marched against gun violence. And I thought that was so important because as the amount of school shootings are ramping up, basically no one's doing anything about the amount of guns that people are getting that they shouldn't be getting, or people with mental disorders are getting guns and no one's really doing anything about it. So we decided to march about it, and it was on TV, it was big, everything, like famous people were there, and it was just cool to be a part of something bigger. So I'm also heavily involved in church. So this is a program for our Martin Luther King, one of our Martin Luther King things that we have at church, and it always turns out really good every year. So one day they march, and then another day they march all the way to the church, and basically we have a whole program with it. And then this is a picture of my family and I after I was crowned, aka So about my internship. So week 1, I was in radiology. This was actually really cool. It was a lot cooler than I thought it was gonna be. I was like, we're gonna do x-rays all day. It's gonna be so boring. So when you do an internship, they tell you always follow your person, always follow your person. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna follow my person. So I followed her, it was cool, everything. So then she was like, you don't have to follow me anymore. Like, I'm just about to break down boxes. I was like, okay. So I had a seat, and then she was gone for a long time. Like, she was gone for like 30 minutes. I was like, yo, where is she? So she comes back, she's like, I'm sorry you were here for so long. I'm sorry I left you. There was a code blue, and we had to go to the ER. And I was like, are you kidding me? I was like, literally breaking down boxes turns into a code blue in the ER. So I was so upset with myself because I'm like, I should have just followed her breaking down boxes, but it's okay. I'm over it at this point. It's okay. So the whole time they had a new system right before we came. So the 21st century skills that I'll talk about later that we learned about were, I saw them a lot while we were at the hospital because co-workers had to be tolerant, extremely tolerant of each other if one co-worker didn't know how to work the system and one knew how to work it better, and they were trying to exchange information and things like that. So day 2 and 4 I was in CT. It's kind of strange because they had one computer for 3 techs. So I was like, how do you guys only use one computer? And they're like, it's extremely hard. We keep asking them to get us a computer, but there's only one computer, and they're always having patients. So they have to be very flexible and tolerant of each other, and just basically work out turns to use the computer. So they did have an outside truck, and one thing that I got to do, which was really cool, was to write down the patient history. So like we're learning about medical abbreviations. Like the lady I was with named Candy, she was like, can you please write down the patient history while I ask them? So I got to use all my abbreviations, and I was like, yay. So it was so cool. I was happy. And she was like, I'm surprised you know all these. I was like, yeah, it's coming back to me. So yeah, I took both of these pictures actually. This is the CT in the outside truck. It was actually really nice. And then this was the MRI room. Okay, so the second week I was with the nurses. So I saw a lot of things, but it wasn't really anything out of the ordinary. We saw a woman with almost a complete bowel obstruction. She was a really old lady, and her family was just trying to like get her to eat and everything, and they didn't really understand all it was gonna do is clog it up, you know what I mean? So she wasn't really passing anything, but she got a few bowel movements in, and then she was able to leave. So that was good. So there was a man, and he also had a bowel obstruction, and I went into the room with the lady, and he was asking like, can I have an enema or can I have a suppository? And she was like, yeah, we'll get you one. So always thinking from the doctor perspective, I was like, okay. So we walk out of the room. I'm like, so someone will be in there to get him one. Then I'm like, oh shoot, that's our job because I'm with the nurse today. So I had to watch her give him a suppository, and I was like, Miss McCallum told us to be professional.
What is that?
A suppository is like a little wax bar. It's like this big, and you insert it, and it's supposed to like melt so it can loosen everything up, and then it'll come out.
Oh.
Yeah. So, but she had to like manually insert it, and I was like, okay, someone will be in to do that, and I was like, oh shoot, that's our job. So I was like, I'm so glad I'm not doing this, but I'll just watch. So yeah, it was pretty cool. And yeah, there was a lady, she was in her bed. I think she has some mental disorder going on, but they did a surgery, and the medicine they gave her to put her under, I think it just took longer to wear off or something, but she was calling the police on the nurses. She was like, they're not treating me right, and the nurses were like, if I can just get that phone out of her hand, she will not get it back. I was like, legal and ethics. Okay, so this is an interesting one because I had registration, and the first day I walked in, the lady was like, I don't have time for interns. So I was like, I don't know what to do about that. Like, I don't know what to say. So I just sat down, and they were really busy, so I understood, and I waited and everything. So then like eventually I got to follow someone, but then another day I was supposed to follow the same lady, and she was like, no, you can't follow me. So I was like, okay. So I don't know how to handle that either, but I just kind of kept following the lady I was following. So actually something, I don't know if Miss McCallum knows, but on day 4, this lady came in. She was registering, and she was asking me what my career choice was, and I told her forensic psychiatry, and she was like, oh, that's what my dad does. And I was like, that is so cool. Like, I wish I could just pick his brain for a little while. So the lady I was following heard me say that, and she was like, why can't you intern with your psych patients? I was like, I don't know. I guess it's a safety and liability issue. So they actually let me go to the ER and sit with the security guard in front of the psych patients, and it was so cool, Miss McCallum. It was so cool, like, because I did my PICO question on schizophrenia, and there was this lady who, there's like a symptom of schizophrenia called catatonia, where like extreme up or extreme down kind of, and there was a lady and she was having those same symptoms. So like to write a paper and to do a project on that and then to see it, like I was literally in heaven that day. So I was so happy, but I didn't want to tell Miss McCallum until our internship was over, so now you know. And there was a guy, so you know how you ask like, have you felt suicidal or like suicidal feelings lately? And the guy was like, no, not like since last summer when I had a bad trip with meth, but it's okay now. And I had to control my face so much. I was like, okay, meth, all right, okay, cool. But how to remember what you said, because like, you know, keeping it together. I was about to be like, oh my gosh, but I had to keep it together, you know. So respiratory, it was kind of, you know, just chill. We gave a lot of breathing treatments, just regular breathing treatments that they hold, and nothing really. The really interesting thing about this was I had to dress up in PPE like this and go into one of the rooms even though I wasn't touching the patient. So it was really cool to like actually put on the stuff and go into a patient's room. So the ICU. So I was only here for 2 days because I had like a track meet, and then another day I wasn't feeling well. But I saw a patient with the NG tube. He had just had it taken out because they thought he could eat regularly, but then they realized he couldn't, so they had to put it back in. Yes. And he was throwing up while they were putting it back in, and it was green and watery. And I was standing there and I was like, Miss McCallum said, keep your face together. So I was like, ugh, but I had to I didn't do it in public. But it was green. It was like this green and it was watery. That's why I used that picture so I can use it as a, you know, example. It was green and watery and it had little things in it. Yeah, it was nasty, but it was okay because I held it together. So then there was another case of a man came in. He was an alcoholic, and he later ended up dying. But it was just like, you know, people drink like underage. People drink all the way up to they're old and die. But actually seeing the effects of alcoholism on this man, like they had to keep him. He was on feeding tube, breathing machine. They had to keep him sedated. They could not like wake him up. Like he was so heavily sedated that they had to keep him that way because when he woke up, he was punching people, biting people, kicking, and the nurses were saying things like, "This is why you don't overly drink and stuff like that." And they were like, not just making light of the situation, but it's kind of like they were making fun of him, and I didn't really feel comfortable with that. But at the same time, I get what they were saying. Like they were like, you know, you have to be very careful. Like there's always a line that you should not cross, especially when things come into play that can intoxicate you. So physical therapy. So this was the most boring week of them all, which I thought it was going to be a little more fun, but it really wasn't. The only thing that was interesting to me really was there was a woman that had a stroke, and the occupational therapist was showing her different stretches that she can do to stretch out her actual nerves, like not her muscle but her nerves, to help her regain feeling and lose the pain in the arm that was affected by her stroke, which was really cool to me. Another thing is I was amazed at the creativity of the therapist. So everyone comes in with their own little pains in different parts of their body, and the therapists have to be creative and choose exercises for them that goes really specifically to them, and so they have to use a lot of creativity. So employability skills, adaptability and flexibility. So like I said about radiology, they had one computer and 3 techs and patients coming in. So they had to work out their own little system of who's gonna get on the computer when and finish all their patients here, and who's gonna go out to the truck and use the CT on the truck, and which patients were able to get on the truck and things like that. So they really had to work together. communication, I saw the nurses in the ER use communications a lot, like that one little half a day I was in there. But I saw them use communication a lot. On the nurses floor, they communicated a lot because they help each other out when passing meds and things like that. Creativity, the physical therapists used creativity whenever they were making up exercises or stretches for the people that were that needed help. Critical observation. So that's another thing that the physical therapists use. Was if they gave the patient an exercise to do, they would pay attention to facial expressions, whether it was putting too much stress on the part that was hurt or not, things like that. Tolerance. Everyone had used tolerance with the new computer system because they said it was completely different from the last system. But I didn't really meet anyone that didn't have an optimistic attitude about the fact that they were going to eventually get it and things like that. Leadership. Leadership was really expressed by this one charge nurse that I saw on the nurses floor. Like, she kept everything together, everything in tip-top shape. She checked on every patient, checked on every nurse, made sure everything was okay. So that was really cool to see. And then positive attitude. Even though I did not like physical therapy really at all, the lady I was following was so bubbly and has such a good personality, and I was like, this is so cool, because this is probably how people look at me when I'm overly hyper, and they're like, why are you hyper? And I'm looking at her like, why are you hyper? This really is not that exciting of a career, I feel like. But she was so excited and passionate about it that it was so cool. So, journal topics. So the first and second journal topic, so the first one was just an introduction. Look up your site, learn about your site. The second one was about safety, ergonomics, and then CDC and OSHA standards. Third was communication, employability, legal and ethics, and then the sixth journal was about kind of like insurance vocabulary and then nonprofit organization. So I included this picture because I just thought it was funny, because as a ballerina, like, they'll tell you, like, lift your chest, put your shoulders down, have your head up, turn your feet out, and it's like so many things like going in different directions. So when you're in ergonomics, like, even when sitting in a chair, there's so many different things that you have to do to like sit correctly, which was funny. And they also have to use those like moving patients we talked about, how to properly do that, like with two people and things like that, bend at the use your legs and not your back and things like that. So my final remarks. So I didn't have a story like you guys where I was like, I wanted to go to the academy since I was blah blah blah. Like, you know, I wanted to go to Carolina Forest. I was dead set on Carolina Forest. But and then my first 2 years were hard here because I was like, I didn't really click with anyone, you know, like I had one friend, probably didn't have any classes with her. So coming to the major was really eye-opening for me, because I feel like I found people that I really clicked with, and we had some of the same interests and things like that. So it has not been easy attending this school for me at all, but it's really opened my eyes, taught me things that I feel like I need to know going to the next level. And I'm leaving high school with great friends, a great experience, and great education. And so this is at Trunk or Treat, and then this is the bodies exhibit, and then these are the little kids that Mr. Isa was reading to at Teddy Bear Clinic. And then so my future plans, so I will attend Hampton University. A week after we graduate, I will start classes. Yeah, so then I will continue going in the fall semester, and I will be a biology major. I'm extremely excited to be attending an HBCU, as all of you know, and I have on scholarship, and I have my family and my teachers to thank for that. And then after college, I plan on going to Meharry Medical School, which is the same medical school that my father attended. And then I'm studying to become a forensic psychiatrist, which is funny because it's like medicine and law mixed, and then my mom's a lawyer and my dad's a doctor. So kind of weird, but and then my sources.